Hello everybody and welcome to the first predictions video of the 2023 NRL season. Gotta say, it does feel a little bit weird of this being at the beginning of March. Obviously, previous year, gotta be a couple of weeks later until it does start. But, got a new team. You've got to start the season a lot earlier to match up with the regular schedule. So, I think without further ado, let's get into it. So the opening match on Thursday, the 2nd of March, is of course the Parramatta Eels up against the Melbourne Storm. Two teams in particular which have a lot of questions surrounding them. For Parramatta's sake is, how are they going to respond after just coming short in attempting to win their first grand final in 37 years? And for the Melbourne Storm is how is their squad going to go, especially now without Brandon Smith? Because for me, the Melbourne Storm, I don't want to say they've got a weak squad, but I think compared to the teams that they've had over the course of their existence, I do think that this is probably the weakest team they've had and fielded ever. Personally, it's a lot of questions about it. There are a few players that I am very interested to see how they do go in Melbourne. Obviously, the main one being Tarek Sims. But thinking about how this game will probably end up going, I know Parramatta have also got a few players out, but they've got some very interesting additions coming in as well. I think, by the way it's going to go, and how it's been for the last couple of years, I think Parramatta should win this match, and it should be relatively easy, personally. Being in Sydney, I think Parramatta should start off the season well. Now we go to the first game on Friday, and it is the New Zealand Warriors up against the Newcastle Knights. It's my team. It's my team. Basically, it's a bit weird for both teams this year. Both teams have lost some players. Obviously, the Warriors have lost Reece Walsh to Brisbane. The Knights have lost Jake Clifford and a bunch of players that have gone over to England. I think Tex Hoy is another one. Jariah Mamasia is another as well. Both teams have made signings as well. Obviously, Mitch Barnett, obviously going from the Knights to the Warriors, so he'll be playing his first game of the season against his old club. But interestingly, is this game, there's two acting points. It's like a seesaw. One side where, in favour of the Knights, is the Knights have not lost a round one game since 2017. But on the other side of this saw, in favour of the Warriors, is the Knights historically have a very bad record when playing in New Zealand. And also another fun tidbit, the last time the Knights lost in round one was against the Warriors in New Zealand. But it's going to be interesting to say this. I think this game will actually be very close. But with it being in New Zealand and the Knights' recent history, I think the Knights will go well. But I think the Warriors will just win. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 2 points would be the deciding factor. So, Warriors getting their opening win there. Now we move on to the main event on Friday night. It is, of course, the defending back-to-back premiers in the Penrith Panthers taking on the Brisbane Broncos. You got one team that has lost a couple of players over the transfer window, and you've got another team which is very much looking to improve for basically bottling a top 8 charge into becoming title contenders. Obviously, Penrith did end up losing the World Club Challenge, I believe it was a week ago at this point now, but it is hard to say about, of questions are Panthers weren't properly trying, all the arguments like that. Brisbane have looked very interesting, to say the least. They got the draw in the pre-season against the Titans, and they also got a narrow win against the North Queensland Cowboys, technically making them the team that performed the best out of all of the Queensland clubs. So it's a lot even than it would be over the last couple of years, but I will say I do think Penrith will come out to a good start, and I think they will be able to take this game out. Will be relatively close, but I just still think Penrith are still going to be a fairly decent force to be reckoned with, especially since you've still got players like Cleary, Luai, To'o. Granted, I wouldn't be surprised if some of them start leaving over the couple of years, because that's been currently the trend with Penrith so far. probably to the Bulldogs. And speaking of the Bulldogs, they kick off the Saturday 3 p.m. match as they play away at Brookvale. I'm not calling it 4 Pines Park, but I just did, so I kind of validate it. They are taking on the Manly Sea Eagles. Obviously, two teams that didn't make the finals last year, and I think two of them that are very much expecting to make the finals this year. You've got Manly, who won the preseason challenge because of weird circumstances, because the point I'm just going to say, the point scoring in it's just completely weird. And you've got the Canterbury Panthers, Bulldogs, that just keep signing Penrith players. Like, Cleary will be playing for them in 3 years' time. I'm calling for it. But should be a very good game from two teams trying to bounce back from last year. It's going to be hard to say because it's very close in terms of the markets. But I am going to go with the Bulldogs to take the win away at Brookvale. I think it's going to be I think their attack's pretty much set. And I think their team is stronger, so I think they're going to be all good there. Now going into the 5:30 game, and it's going to be the North Queensland Cowboys taking on the Canberra Raiders. Obviously, the Cowboys did make it all the way to the prelim final, losing to Parramatta in controversial fashion, which, in my personal opinion, they weren't robbed. It was the opening try of the game, and the Cowboys bounced back and were ahead. If the try was one of the ones where Parramatta were coming back, then I could understand why people think they got robbed. Also, what the fuck with the Tigers game? So that's my personal take on that. But anyways, the North Queensland Cowboys pretty much have got their whole team basically. I think the only one of their key losses is Hamisa Tabuai-Fidow, who is now at the Dolphins. Canberra's got a pretty interesting team as well. They've got pretty much their forward pack, which is very interesting to say the least. Very solid across the board. The betting market is having it very much in favour of the Cowboys, but I think it's going to be actually relatively close. I do think Cowboys will take the win, however, but I don't just see it justifying that much of a gap. Now we go into the final game on the Saturday, and it is the Cronulla Sharks up against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Obviously, this is the first time the two teams are playing since the semi-final last year, where the South Sydney just ran right and just completely dominated the facets of the match. The Sharks, obviously, haven't really lost or signed anyone as much. Obviously, Lachlan Miller did end up leaving the Sharks to go to the Knights. It was a little bit delayed, but it did eventually happen. South Sydney have pretty much got all their players all locked up as well. Obviously, Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell have signed extensions. I do think South Sydney should be able to win this game. I think it should be just clean sailing through there. Obviously, South Sydney. Both teams are trying to keep going because both teams did finish in the 8. Obviously, Cronulla finished second, which I still don't know how, but I think South Sydney will just come out of the gates quicker for round 1. Now we go into the Sunday games, and at 4 p.m. it is, 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, it is the first ever match of the redacted Dolphins, because you can't say Redcliffe, as they take on the Sydney Roosters in the inaugural Arthur Beetson Cup. You've got one team, obviously, brand new expansion team, against a team that a lot of people have them being minor premiers and even winning the whole thing. I don't think it'll be an absolute blowout, but it's going to be fairly safe to say I think the Roosters should be able to win this game. I think it'll be a decent hit out though for the Dolphins to pretty much test themselves right out of the gate to see how they are against one of the alleged competition's best. But then again, I just think the Roosters are going to be too good. And they're going to get Dominic Young next year. And finally, we're going into the last game of the round, 6:15 at Leichhardt Oval. It is the West Tigers against the Gold Coast Titans. Oh boy, remember last time these two teams played? It was a 5-star classic. Just for a little bit of a trick back, this is me at halftime during that game. Oh, it's 2-2 at halftime. What the fuck has happened? I actually lost the plot. I actually lost it. I actually can't remember that moment there. The only thing that actually reminds me of it is when I watched that back, because I actually had a psychotic break. But you got to say, two teams that look very interesting. Obviously, the West Tigers did get the wooden spoon last year, as a lot predicted, but the signings they've made to their forward pack is going to be very interesting, to say the least. You've got David Clemmer, Apisai Coruscant, and Isaiah Papali'i. Tried to get Mitchell Moses, but Mitchell Moses eventually decided to re-sign with Parramatta, which I think is the right decision for him. But you got the West Tigers, their forward pack looks good, and you got the Gold Coast Titans, which I don't know how I feel about them. They've definitely got some good players. You got Kieran Foran now on the team for the first time. You also got Sam Verrills. It's gonna be hard to say what will happen in this game. Obviously, from the very famous game they had last year, I think the Tigers might just get the win, but I don't know. I do think the Titans are probably the more solid team, but a lot of question marks. Don't know how the Tigers are going to go. They could just come and absolutely start running roughshod. But anyways, that is the end of my predictions video. Obviously, St. George being the team that they've got to buy. And in fairness, good, because if they did lose round one, they'd probably be maybe in the aftermath of that game about 3 or 4 media statements. So that's there. So who do you guys have for round one? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. And this is going to be a very exciting year for rugby league in Australia for 2023.